Hello, and welcome to HNB Conversations with Rivka and Cosmo.
Okay, that'll do.
Thank you.
That'll be fine.
I
It's
think
fine. We can change the name too with Rivka and Cosmo.
No, we don't have to. I think Rivka and Cosmo is good.
But right, and it is.
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay. So hey, welcome everybody. Go ahead and say hello to us.
So today we are saying hello in Armenian, and you say barev.
Barev.
It's barev. It's what it's spelled B-A-H and R-E-V. Barev.
Right.
So barev, and Armenia is sort of in the Middle East, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just north of a little bit north of Iran.
Right.
Or directly north of Iran, and west of or east of Turkey.
Yeah. And as Giovanni would say, fun fact, the Armenians and Greeks are actually friends. When I was in high school, I remember I was starting my new high school in Israel, and this guy comes out to me. His name was Shant, which I thought, what did I know? And he's like, hi, my name is Shant. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, because it was an international school, the first thing they ask is like, what are you? Literally
Right.
just like that. So what are you?
Right.
And and so he comes out, he's like, hi, my name is Shant. And I'm like, hi, my name is Rivka. And Rivka can be Arabic or Hebrew, so it was fine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, so what are you? And I go, well, I'm Greek, because they know we speak English, so like everyone has this American.
They can tell you're American.
Yeah, they know that, but that's not, it's America, so it's a melting pot, so
Yeah.
you can be lots of different things.
Sure.
So he was like, hi, my name is Sean, what are you? And I said, I'm Greek. And he goes, ah. He goes, he's so funny. He goes, ah. He goes, we're friends. The Turks are our enemy. And I was just like, are we still doing that? It's been like 400
The
years.
enemy of my enemy
is my friend.
Right.
But he was really great. He and his sister were really great. And we had a lot of fun. But yeah, it was like, he was like, yeah, you're Greek, I'm Armenian. We can be friends, but not with Turks.
Right.
And what did I know? I was just like, all right, okay. I was like in 9th grade, new to the school.
Yeah. It's like anytime anybody's playing against like the Patriots or the Jets, I root for that team.
Sure.
And then when it's the enemies of my teams playing each other, then I just root for the one that's been doing worse.
Sure, except Armenia and Greeks are actually friends.
Are you excited
What?
that it's mid to late July?
No.
And that August is
No.
NFL training camp?
No.
And that football starts in September? It's close?
No.
I could tell you're excited about that.
No.
And this year it's going to be on the NFL ticket on YouTube TV, so that'll be really convenient where you can watch multiple games at the same time.
That's going to be really hard for you. You have so much to do in the month of August.
It's true, but August isn't when the football season starts. September is when the football season starts.
It's also going to be challenging for you. There's a lot going on in September. My heart goes out to you. That's really rough.
Thanks, babe.
I know.
You know what?
That's my job.
I'll find a way.
You'll find a way.
Find a way.
You'll find a way. All right.
All right, Antonio, why don't you ask us a question?
All right, 1 moment. Okay. Yeah. You all wake up and find that there is no social media, no cell phones, no laptops or tablets or anything of instant gratification like that. Everything that you're used to is gone, and there is a written note on the empty dining room table that says, for 1 week, it will be like the years 1980 through 89. Show your children, nieces, and nephews the beauty of childhood in these years. What will you all do, and how are your children going to react? How will you react?
First of all, first, because life is just this way, like we use it for everything. At first, it would be like, oh no, what do we do? Just like
It would take some adaptation.
Yeah, it would for sure, because we're so dependent on those things. Just like, when the boys were babies and we couldn't afford cable, and so we were going to have it cut off, but they wait like a week or something. So I was like in the middle of watching a show, and I'm doing my work and everything, and all of a sudden the television just goes, and it's just that fuzz.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like I had a moment of panic, like, what do I do? And then I'm like, what do I do? Come on, it's television. Like, there's so much to do. And we have done fasts as a family before, removing all digital computers, phones, and all of that, and just watching like 80s television. We did that once like for an entire month.
Yeah, that was
So at
fun.
first, I think all the kids would be like, "Oh no, how are we going to be in contact?" And you have to have that mental shift. But then I think every one of us would be like, "This is nice.
Right. I mean,
We get to just be here. We're not everywhere mentally. We're
I think
just
there's
here."
pros and cons to all of it. It's interesting. We'll be watching a movie or a television show from that time, right? From the 80s or even from the early 90s. And
Or the entire 90s. I didn't have a phone in the 90s.
well, yeah, that's true. Late 90s we did. But we'll be watching it from the 90s or 80s, and then the person, the protagonist in the movie or whatever in the show is experiencing something, and it hits you like instinctively. It's like, well, just call someone or
Right.
Google
like,
it
why
or
are
look
they,
up like.
Like, why isn't this person just calling? Or they need police. And they're like, someone go find the police. And I think to myself, why don't they just call the police?
I'll never forget. Okay, so I don't know if anyone knows, I'm a huge sports fan, and I'll never forget when. So when I was a kid in the 80s, I would, I lived on the East Coast, so our evening news was at 11 p.m. And where we lived in Bushnell, but
Your evening news.
yeah,
was
so in
at
the
11
Midwest,
PM.
the evening nightly news is at 10.
I grew up in New York. My parents weren't watching the news at 11 o'clock. They were watching the news at 5.
Oh, excuse me. No. Live at 5, sure, but there's 6 o'clock news, 6:30 international news,
right.
and then the local nightly news
Okay.
is at 11.
All right. I was
So
gonna say, 'cause I
primetime
remember my parents
television,
watching the news, and I had to be in bed by
primetime
8.
television on the East Coast starts at 8. So you have 8 o'clock shows, 9
Mm-hmm.
o'clock, 8:30, 9:30.
Right.
Then you have your 10 o'clock like Dynasty or whatever the old folks were
That
watching.
came on at 10.
Usually, I think you had those shows at 10, and then at 11 was the news, and then
Yeah.
Johnny Carson was at 11:30.
I think it's neat that you know all of that. I don't know all of that because
Yeah.
I had to be in bed by 8 o'clock.
Right.
Like forever.
So when I would watch Monday Night Football, it was at 9 p.m. on Monday night. So my mom and dad would make me take a nap if I wanted to watch it because it would end after midnight, and I had school the next morning, so I had to sleep so that I was rested.
You hardly need sleep though.
But I did then. I had to nap. Because then at least it helped with my sleep. I don't know. It just did.
Actually,
Anyway,
according to the neurologist, naps are actually not that good for you.
no, they're fine.
Long naps.
Long. Anyway, so let's.
Were you at the neurologist appointment, Antonio?
But
Done a good amount of research.
okay.
Oh, I was speaking to an actual scientist.
Okay, so listen. So anyway, so so I used to watch the 11 o'clock news to see if the Yankees had won, and the score, if they were playing on the West, because where we lived, we didn't have cable. Cable didn't reach out to where our house was, and we didn't have it in like satellite, so we just had local stuff. So I would wake up every morning and check the Tampa Tribune, read the newspaper, see if how the Yankees were doing, and then at night, if they were playing on the West Coast, it would be like a late game. You would never get the score. The score wasn't there. So when in the early 90s, a friend of mine, they didn't call it the internet yet. They said, we have CompuServe, and which was basically an internet, which was a provider, like AOL. And so they had CompuServe, and I was like, oh, wow, I don't know what that is. And then they showed me how on their computer, like in the middle of a game, I could see the score mid-game if it wasn't on television. Like this was mind-blowing to me that as it was happening, I could follow it. And so I think back to those days when how remarkable that was to me. So now if we leave our home now and my phone's not in my pocket, I feel it's like you've left your wallet. It's
Right.
like you've left everything. You start hitting and so
For some people, it is because you can pay now with your phone.
well that indeed. And so, but I recall for us, so my dad was a prison chaplain, and so he was on call there, and so there were times when, if it was his day off, in order to make sure that he fully got to enjoy his day off, because there was a second chaplain in case, but if that we would leave the house, we would go out on, kind of just on a drive, just go places. And there was no phone, no accessibility. And it was just sort of like you called someone's house and it rang and rang and rang and rang, even before people had answering machines.
Right.
And it was
when
like
people were
they're
out,
not
they were
home,
out.
or you
and
call.
people weren't scared all the time too. Like if you didn't hear back from someone, you just assumed they were busy, because unless someone called you and said, or the police showed up at your door, people weren't scared.
You're
That's
just
how
out
come,
living your lives.
Right. That's how come kids could play outside. Like parents were okay with their kids playing outside because we weren't walking around thinking about worst case scenario and all the horrible things that could possibly happen.
So, excuse me. So the idea now, we are, there are a lot of benefits that we have. We
just
have a
happens
map
so
all the time.
fast.
We have all the music that we want. We have all the entertainment that we want.
Movies.
I have a massive library.
Remember when the boys were little, and what were those little tiny screens where they were the
iPods?
The iPods?
The-
But they were really small at first. Like
Oh.
the size of your watch.
Are you talking about the red iPod you had that you put Pride and Prejudice onto? That was like the tiniest inch size.
No, it was something I borrowed from when we were staying at Jonathan and Monica's, and Monica had one, and it just had this small little screen.
It was early iPods. They were the early
Yeah.
iPods.
But what I'm saying is like that. We were watching things on something that small and really happy with it.
So I remember when I got my first portable DVD player, and being able to watch a DVD wherever we went was like amazing.
When did you get your first?
We were married,
I know. That's why the way you said that, I was like,
but it was my birthday.
Oh,
I got it for
okay.
I used birthday money to get it.
I see.
And so I was like, we were somewhere, and I was like, I can watch a DVD right here on my lap. It was just
know.
phenomenal to
yeah.
me.
I remember
And
when my
so-
dad was like, Riv, come here. And he called me into his office, and it was probably 96 or the beginning of 97.
I
And-
think we were married actually.
When my
Right.
dad called me into his office to show me his computer.
To show you how he could watch television
Yeah.
on his computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, well,
98.
anyways, I was like, wow. He's like, yeah. He's like, I can see the news. I can see, and work on my computer. And I was like, wow, that's amazing.
That was actually,
There was a part of me that was like, why would you do that? But it was still amazing. And now.
that was an old version of an Apple computer that allowed someone to actually plug their cable so he
I
was
see.
actually watching cable on his computer while also being able to compute.
I see.
Because at the time, I remember when I would try to watch Yankees video clips,
Mm-hmm.
and we had dial-up, and so it was so pixelated, it wasn't really good. And I thought, how could you couldn't really watch, like I would see the TV commercials where they would kind of advertise what you could do, and they basically would. It was a lie. They would put this really crisp, clear picture like you're watching on TV on someone's device, and I was like, that's not what it looks like. But now we actually have that. Now we have this HD stuff. So anyway, but all that to say, the back end of the question was, tell me, Antonio, tell me the back end of the question, like what the question led to. It kind of laid out the scenario, but then
What will you all do, and how are your children going to react, and how are you going to react?
I
all
think
right.
it'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I think because like you said, we've done something like it, and we've actually had these seasons where we would hit summer, some point in the summer, and we would say, hey, everyone, we're not going to be watching TV. Like, this is just reading. And so,
Right, it would be all
and so
about
you'd
books.
have to kind of, I mean, remember when you were a kid and the power would go out, and at first you didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then you light candles, and then suddenly it became like this cozy adventure, and then the power would come back on, and it'd almost be disappointing when the power came back on.
Yeah. Because everybody would also have to be together.
Because it would just
Be quiet.
simplify.
There's so
and
much
quiet.
noise with electricity. We don't realize it because we've become acclimated to it. But like when everything turns off that's electrical, it's silent.
When we lived in our first ministry position, we lived in Napa, California, and Rivka's aunt and uncle lived up in Lake County, north of Napa, but in the boonies. They lived out in the wilderness,
It was wonderful.
And so we would go on occasional weekends. We would go up and stay with them for a few days, and we were unreachable.
Right. And it wasn't an expectation that we had to be reachable because cell phones hadn't gotten to that
early.
extent. Well, like today people are like, if I call you, it doesn't matter if it's your job, your friends, or whatever. Like, everyone has an expectation. I should be able to get a hold of you.
At any
No
time.
one's allowed to like just be unavailable anymore. It's no longer a part of our culture. I mean, people can say, oh, I'm unavailable. I decide that's good for you.
All right.
Congratulations. However, as a society, the expectation is that everyone's available. So everyone's working all the time, all of that. So when we would go up there, it was so quiet and so nice, and they didn't have television. They didn't have anything. And we would just be up there with, first it was Antonio.
Giovanni.
I'm sorry.
He was our first.
First it was Giovanni, and then we made it all the way through Cassini going up there, and then they moved, didn't they?
No, all the way. We had in 2015, we were there with all the kids.
Oh, that's right. My memory is not great.
But we went there from here. We drove one January. I think initially, look, there are pros and cons to everything. I do miss, but at the time you didn't know how simple things were, and how quiet things were. Because at the same time, sometimes things were so boring when we were kids too.
No, that's just a part of being a kid, because our kids can get bored as well.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's beneficial to always be stimulated.
Right.
I think it contributes to a great deal of why a lot of us have anxiety and depression and all of these other issues, because there's never a time where we are not being stimulated. We're overstimulated, we're exhausted, we're tired, and our brains just want to be like, peace, please.
Right.
And we don't know what that peace is because we don't have it anymore.
It's just all the noise.
You can't even find it. Like, you'd have to go to a where nuns and monks live and have a vow of silence or something for you to have that, or you have to completely live off the grid, and none of us are able to do that if we are going to survive and have jobs and all of that
anymore.
So I enjoy it. I miss it. Me personally, I'm an introvert, so I love the idea of, I mean, it was hard for me when we'd go on vacations and you would post so much on Facebook, and I was like, can't we have a minute where it's just us, it's just our private lives? Does everybody have to be watching us at all times, or us watching them? Because everybody pretty much lives in a fishbowl now. Mm-hmm. Well, projects what they want their fishbowl to look like.
Sure.
But and I was just really uncomfortable with that, and so I like the idea of being present and not feeling like I need to answer a text, or who might call me, or who might need me. Mm-hmm. I get to be present in my home and my home alone with my kids, and I get to do the things I want to do without constant interruption. Because there's constant interruptions at all times.
You know, I think about when I first became a young adult, or even when I first started driving, and I'm 16, 17, and how, you know, I would drive, because we lived in this small town, and I would drive into Tampa, and I was very comfortable driving on the freeways very quickly. It didn't make me uncomfortable. And now I think when my kids began driving, like, you know, we just got Cassini her permit, and the idea of my the idea of my little girl being on the road,
right?
You know, and not being able to call her, not being able to say, where is she?
I know.
Or see, like that.
But that's what I mean. But we're scared all the time.
That makes me, like, I want to know where she is, right?
Yeah, and you follow her.
I do.
You follow all our children. You know where Giovanni is in Nashville, like, at all times. And I'm just like, I know that a lot of people do this, and I understand the benefits of it. But at the same time, like, we're so controlling. We feel like we can control things. We've got our fingers in every tiny thing. That's what I mean. Like, we're not present. Giovanni's going to be okay in Nashville, and Cassini's going to be okay on the road. I know you say yeah.
Yeah,
but
I
you're
don't,
not watching
But
them.
you know how, like when I was, okay, so when I would get someplace, my mom would say, just when you get there, call me, right?
That's what friends does, though. She didn't say, call me when you get to Walmart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like when
but
we
that's when-
follow people, we're like,
No, but primary, okay. So I don't,
no, what I'm saying,
yeah, like I don't sit there and go, where are they? I'm mostly concerned about when they're going on long trips. That's when I'm like, hey, where are they? How they doing?
well, our whole family is able to watch each other.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
we have that app, and so the kids, like,
Yeah.
they'll be like, they're on this street, or this is where they are.
Right.
Or if we're out on a date and, you can look at your phone and you know that they're all there and all of that.
Sure.
And it gives us what feels like a sense of control, but we don't actually have that control.
Yeah.
So if we realize we don't have that control and we have our phones, there's just fear. Like when you don't have your phone, you're like, oh my gosh, where's my phone? Where's my phone? These are all control to me. And I know lots of people will disagree with me, but we are getting more and more and more and more controlling. And how do I explain this? I feel like we're getting more controlling. We're feeling the need to micromanage and see everything, so much so that there's never a time to just know or trust the Lord. I mean, we say we trust the Lord, but then we're freaking out about everything.
Yeah, well,
I think technology has put us in a position where it's not actually easier. I think it was created to be easier. I don't think it's easier that benefits us. I think it makes things easier, but much more complicated.
Okay.
And back in the day, or like when we lived in Israel, things were simpler, but they were difficult.
Sure. I mean, look, there's so I would say a couple of things. I would say that there may be elements of that you have to keep an eye on for fear and control and anxiety. I
don't think we associate the two. I'm just saying that's what I think.
Yeah. So I think anything can be used in a things can become extreme, and so what can happen is, and I do feel like we get new technologies, and then they will swing to a full usage, and then what we do is go, you know what? Let's begin to be changes and moderations that, for instance, so now on our Apple phones, it has all of these opportunities where you can, which I use, where I can set up do not disturb modes. So, for instance, if I'm on because my phone and my computer work together, so if I'm studying, these notifications that come up, forget about it.
Right.
So, but I can put it on my study mode, which is a do not disturb mode. I have a family time do not disturb mode. I have these others so that yes, there may be people saying, I demand this access to you. And my answer is no. And people can get frustrated, and that's fine. But where we seek to have the balance in our lives,
right,
to go, okay, this swung too far, this pendulum swung too far over here, so I can take the benefits of the technology, but not be controlled by that. And so
but that's a good, and it applies to everything. I'm saying I wish I didn't have to do that.
Sure.
It feels to me like I'm in a situation where I have like paddle ball, or you have and there's just constantly I'm gonna have a knock it, where I'm like defending myself to try and just be natural.
But at the same time, when you weigh it all out, what you do prefer is being able to not go searching at 80 different stores for the thing that you want.
Yeah.
And all the time that takes away from family and the things that you value.
Right.
And so you can do online shopping that you enjoy, but you can't let, so that's where saying the technology is a tool, and letting it be something that and so that, for instance,
I see the benefit.
Obviously, what we're doing right now, we have the technology now to have conversations. If you don't want to hear
us, you can just turn us off.
Correct. Or we are able to, when we talk about even ministry wise, for better or for worse, like it or not, it's just a certain reality. If someone comes knocking at your door, and they're not delivering an Amazon package,
Nobody knocks at our door hardly that's not delivering an Amazon package
right?
anymore.
Because if they do, you're like,
Why are you
why
here?
are like
Why
the
would
idea?
you actually?
the
A lot of
idea of-
kids even feel that way about phone calls. Like, why
Yeah,
are you
right.
calling me? And I'm not going to call somebody. I'll text them and see if we can talk.
It's so
or whatever.
funny.
But cold calling, like how everybody called each other back in the day.
Where the phone rang and you didn't know who was on the other side.
Right,
Remember
and
the
you're just
first
like,
time you got
"Hello?"
caller ID, and
Yeah.
that was amazing being able to see who was calling. So what I'm saying is like you can't effectively do like door to door witnessing.
No one's going to answer their doors.
People aren't going to have that conversation to answer the door, but because of what we're able to do with ministering via the technology that's there with YouTube and Facebook and so forth, that people have that with them all the time, that we're able to get behind the door through the media that's available. And so the message is going out, and where there are borders and where there are walls, for instance, what the technology has done now is in places where the Bible is not legal, to be able to electronically get a Bible to people is amazing. So Bible smuggling
Yeah.
is not what it was. Now the Word of God is available and can be people in China don't have to have little torn out pages tucked away.
Yeah, like it
and so
says,
there's a lot
He brings all
of-
things together for good.
there's a lot
There's
of
a lot of
benefit.
good. I'm not saying that it's not beneficial. I'm saying that if it all turned off,
Yeah.
it would be a little bit of an adjustment,
Right.
for this ease that everything is at our fingertips. Like when we have our family night and we're going to watch a movie, we try to always have everybody put their phones either in a box or on the table.
Correct.
And that's really hard for the kids. Like for 2 hours, you can't put your phone down just to spend with us. You do it in a movie theater.
Right.
I mean, for the most part. And so, but that's challenging. That's hard because you naturally go, what if something happens and I need to know about it? So somewhere in you, you're always on alert. Something might happen and I need to know about it.
Yeah.
And then also, but for me, like if I don't have my phone, I find myself, we put our phones down and we put them away for that 2.5 hours. And as I'm watching the television, what am I, 85? As I'm
You can
watching
say the whole
the
word,
TV,
it's okay.
I go, oh, I want to learn about that guy. Or, oh, when did this movie come out? Or, oh, like
Right.
and you can.
All this information.
I can just immediately get that information and I go to reach for my phone and I don't have my phone because we've put them on the table and I'm
Right.
like, oh, no. But I'm not actually, what I recognize in that moment is I no longer just watch the movie and take it in. I'm watching the movie and then I'm going, oh, what about this? And oh, what about that? And I'm going to read this while I'm watching the movie. I'm going to do all these other things.
Yeah.
To where I'm not just present in just watching that movie.
But it's interesting, I remember as we were growing up, watching television, watching movies, and folks, I watched a lot of television growing up. I know all the commercials. I can sing them. I know all the theme songs.
Yeah, there was no boundaries when it came to watching TV
I had,
as a kid.
I mean, there was boundaries, but I watched, not time boundaries, just content boundaries. But I watched,
Okay.
I mean, relatively speaking.
What kind of content boundaries unless you were going to the movie theater?
No, rent it with this anyway. But my point, you're going to distract me from the
sorry.
point that I'm making, which I have to recover. Where was I
Sorry.
going?
Go ahead.
I
I'm sorry.
watched a lot of. Oh, yeah. So people would always say, TV is going to rot your brain and rot in your brain, and maybe and I remember then when Gen X, when we were still the new generation, we were the young generation,
We were what Gen Z is now.
Yeah, and I did, correct. And I did a research paper on understanding and impacting reaching Gen X. And so as I read different studies about the way Generation X interacted with media, the studies actually showed that we were not passive consumers of media, but we were interactive consumers of media. So rather than our brains rotting and going to sleep, our brains were interacting, and we were becoming increasingly savvy with how we dealt with media, and in terms of even interacting with video games, because we were
So
Gen X was the
today-
first video game generation.
So today,
and
my brain just never stops
And
interacting.
so our kids, even to a greater degree, they're not simply consuming media, but there's more interaction, and so
I
there
think
again
Rafi's-
pros and cons. But go ahead.
I think Rafi's first language was working or like
Electronics.
electronics
Yeah.
because he couldn't fully speak, but he could take my phone and he could navigate through my phone, and he could bring up different things, and he couldn't text, of course, because he couldn't read or write or anything like that, but he could do more on my phone than I could do on my phone.
You
And
remember-
he would take it and he would just like work through it the same way kids do with English or whatever, and he could do so much on that phone, and yet he couldn't fully read and write or speak in full sentences or whatever.
I remember him trying to swipe a physical screen
Oh, yeah, of a computer.
because
he was so used to just being able to swipe.
being able to swipe, and he's
Yeah.
like 2 years old. Well, and even now, when he and I will play video games together, the controllers now have, they have. I can't even count how many buttons on them that you're
no.
using all of your. There's
kids are
multiple.
like, "Hit
there's
the X,
multiple
hit
sticks,
the
and I'm
X,"
like,
and
I don't
I'm
know
like,
which
"I don't
one's the
know
X.
which
I
one's
can't
the
see
X."
the
Right,
letters
I
on them,
can't, and they know it all.
And there's these. So, and I'm used to just a simple either 15 buttons. You said. Yeah, 15 buttons, and I got 10 fingers. And I'm used to the
Like
when we
four.
went from the Atari joystick of a single button and a stick to a the D pad on the Nintendo controller with 2 buttons with A and B was already a step up. And so the simplicity of that for my brain works, and for my kids they're much more.
Yeah. But Giovanni and Antonio didn't really, till the age of 10 and 12, or until we moved actually to Arizona, other than playing like Garage Band, Giovanni didn't, and using like homeschool stuff, we didn't have internet out
We didn't have
there.
internet because, well, we had a single.
Right. But we didn't have internet as we know now. Like,
Right,
it's
they couldn't
accessible
stream.
for everyone.
Use the internet whatsoever.
You got to use your microphone if you're going to talk.
Sorry. I didn't use the internet whatsoever until I was probably 11.
Right.
Right.
I was 11. I think.
Right. And so they grew up differently
Than
Rafi and Rivka and Gazini, because by the time we had them, we were traveling around the country and doing ministry, and so they had devices and things to help them during the most boring periods. Now, they had books and stuff and all of that as
Right.
well, and they had games.
We had a
but
huge VHS library.
Yeah. But the boys, early on, it was very simple.
And it's funny sometimes what they, when our Antonio here, he's 21 going on 81, and so he got rid of his smartphone. He got what they call a dumb phone, and
Is that literally what it's called?
It's a slang term. It's called the light phone.
Yes.
called a light phone, and so it doesn't have all the apps and stuff on it.
Doesn't have anything but text.
And but one of the things, look, we sound like, well, I was a boy, but one of the things that we missed the delight in, for instance, was the going to the video store and picking.
That was fun.
Picking a
We
movie,
used to do
like
that with the
you
boys.
made it a thing. You're like, let's go rent a
Well, like
movie.
like there are times now where I'll be like, when the boys were little, we would go, and even the little ones were little. We'll rent a movie and get a pizza, and it was like
like
oh,
a
wow,
big
right.
event.
And I'm like, there have been times where I'm all, okay, maybe we can like rent a movie or whatever. Everything is at our fingertips. Nothing is
It's
special.
all available, right?
It's so available. It's like if you have all the wealth in the world, you don't actually like
Appreciate
it, see how incredibly value it is, or or anything like that because you have
Well,
it
that's
all.
that's why right now, like, what our kids really love is when we sit around the card table and play
Right. Mm-hmm.
board games and play card games and
Interact.
interact in
And we've
that
been
way,
doing that
and
a
the
lot.
and the quiet of that and the simplicity. I think if we did it, like when we've done different times where we did digital fasts to different degrees through the years, and
I don't think our kids would let us now.
No.
Like, I think that if we told the kids for a whole month, we're going to be off our phones. I think that Cassini at least would like
revolt.
serious revolt.
Sandy would not.
There would be absolute, and then Rivka would just have some sort of nervous breakdown. Like, how am I going to be there for all the people that I'm there for? I need to know how they're doing.
I think Riv would be fine. Rafi
She would
would be good.
adjust.
I think Cassiani would, because she's the most social.
Yeah, she
would really struggle with that. Rivka, honestly, like,
She would adjust.
she would adjust.
Yeah, I
She'd
was
be
talking
good.
with Giovanni about that the other day, and he was like, we were talking about that, and I said, I'm like, you guys didn't give any pushback. You were like, okay. And he said, actually, there was a lot of pushback. We just didn't tell you. And I was like, okay, that's
yeah,
fair.
it's funny.
Yes.
I've had this. So when I don't know if we'll have time for another question after this one today. Yeah. So I have this conversation sometimes where I don't know if you guys know, I'm a huge sports fan.
Do you have to start it like that every
Isn't
time?
that funny? I think it's funnier every time I say it just like that. But here's so sometimes my sons will say, "Hey, Dad, I'm sorry, I'm not like such like my sons are casual sports fans. They'll sit and enjoy a game with me or part of a game with me. They'll
Just for you, not for
for
them.
me. They do it for my sake.
They're not
they do it to
interested.
spend time with me.
Is Rafi even interested?
He does. Yeah, he expresses interest to some degree, but then it doesn't hold his attention or
Sure.
whatever, and or they like to go to the games. But what I know is this: I know that I can remember being a kid, being like, I like playing baseball, but I don't like watching baseball. That's how I was when I was small. I didn't understand football. My dad was not a sports fan at all. My dad came to all my games, but didn't watch sports. And so when when I was like 11, we used to go to a church that was like 45 minutes from our house. And so Sunday mornings we would go to church and then come home in the afternoon and then go back for the evening. So it was a 45-minute drive there, 45-minute drive. So what we started doing was on Sunday afternoons, we would go to there was a family that we would go to their house during the afternoon. And they had 5 daughters that their youngest daughter was my sister's age. So they were all at least 4 years older than me. And I was bored out of my mind. Sunday television was awful. It was westerns, which I did not enjoy. It was car racing, which I did not enjoy. And there was football. And I didn't know much about football, but it became my best choice. And I would kind of go back and forth watching between the Bucks and the Dolphins. Well, the Dolphins had Dan Marino, so I start watching that. I start learning the game. I'm 11 years old. I start understanding because the announcers are explaining it. All that to say, if I would have had a portable video game, if I would have had portable media where I could watch any cartoon I wanted, any movie I wanted, right? I actually never would have gotten into football. Mm-hmm. I would have probably been like, because I didn't get it.
Right.
And so what happened was the boredom and the lack of choices sent me in the direction of choosing something that I really came to understand and appreciate, and I really love to watch it now. And so I recognize my sons, they had all of these other
different. It's a different
media
generation.
options, and so it's just. But I think we would have you would have withdrawals for a couple of days, and then you would adjust, and enjoy it. So I think that's probably we've probably exhausted that question. I think, right? I mean, so, and we've been talking a bit on that.
Yeah.
So I think
I will just say that I enjoy technology. I benefit greatly. Of course, it's simple or it's easier. I can buy things. I can order my groceries. Like there's all of those things that absolutely make a Jetsons lifestyle worthwhile. However, there is the part of me that dreams of everything stopping.
Of the quiet.
Yeah. Like I think there'd be more human interaction. Now, yeah, it's harder to share the gospel and stuff like that. I get it. But I think that I think there's something to be said. Now this is going to sound super, I don't know.
Wait, did you say you think it's harder to share the gospel now?
No, with technology, it's not as hard.
Oh.
It's harder to share the gospel when you don't have technology.
Got it. Okay.
But I think God's ways are the best ways. So I like the quiet. I don't think God invented technology. I think he brings all things together for good, and so we're able to utilize it and use it. But I don't know in the long term. I think it's great we're using it at how we're using it because it's a part of our culture and our society and all of that. However, I personally would love a life without as much technology. Because I remember when we didn't have technology, and I remember my childhood and how much we played outside and everything that we did. And people thought we weren't playing. People thought we weren't playing outside enough, you know. And I remember how much the boys played outside all the time. And I know how much, like, I know we have things that our kids can do outside. I know it's really hot and all that, but our children, as a whole, would rather be inside.
Yeah.
Than outside. And I don't think we were created for that. And so I think that has that eventually we will recognize this isn't really healthy. This all happened really, really fast, and we're utilizing it all up. But I think there's a lot of aspects to our technology that we know some of it now, but I think, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, culturally, I think people are going to recognize, this isn't actually so good for us. I'm not saying it's going to go away.
Right. I get no. I think the thing I would say though is,
and I'm not saying we should do away with it.
I think anything. I don't think the Lord is.
It's not like anti-God.
Yeah.
I'm just saying
anything that's used in a like.
Look, I love medicine. And man invented medicine, so I'm thankful
so God
for
gave
that.
us the capability of
right, and I understand that. I really, really do. What I'm saying is, I think our brains and our hearts and our spirits are deeply affected in a way that we weren't created for concerning all of that we have right now.
Yeah,
which is why we have all the issues we have right now.
So if you look at an ancient pace, that when we talk about technology, and of course we're a lot of what we're talking about is even media technology. But when you look at an ancient pace that required going down to the river to wash your clothes, or all of these things, going down to the river to get water and carry it back.
I don't want to live like the ancients.
Right. All of these things, though, made life slow down. Your expectations of
died younger.
The expectations of what would be accomplished within a day were different. There wasn't the same level of anxiety of gotta go, gotta do this, gotta do that. Have I been fruitful today? Have I accomplished a lot? Because the technology enables us to accomplish more than we would otherwise be able to accomplish on one hand, right? But then we don't have the time. We don't take the time to rest and be quiet and hear the voice of the Lord, and even to, and like one of the things you'll say to me is, I think we talked about a little bit about this last week, where about music and so forth. Like you'd be like, when I get in the car, and I always put on music, and Cassini's like that too, or we'll put music on and we're singing, and you're like, can it just be quiet? When do you think? Like, when do you think? And I'm like, I do think. I just think at different times in different ways, and like when you talk about monks and the vow of silence, to me, that sounded like awful to me.
Really?
Awful.
Really?
Like when I was in high school, there was one day where I got put in school suspension. And when you were in in-school suspension, you could not talk, no words, the whole day.
That must have been really hard for you.
horrible.
Yeah, that
It
must have been very hard
was
for you.
torment. As we walked, when we had to walk to the lunchroom, we walked like we were criminals in a line. We're like we were a chain gang. And
Okay.
and no, for real. And then and it's funny, different people, not just my friends, but I grew up in the same school system my entire life. They'd be like, "You're in." They called it something else. What was it called? AC, alternative curriculum. You're in AC. You're in AC, and they'd be walking next to my criminal line of chain gang, taunting me, and I couldn't. If you talked, you got another day.
Oh.
And you would just add to your sentence.
I would just end the day with a
And
hello, and
it
then I'd get another
was
day.
just the worst. So the idea of choosing to go to a place where you didn't talk. In fact, when I first moved out on my own, like after college, and I moved up to Springfield, and I got up there and I lived in my own apartment, and I had knee surgery, so I couldn't drive my car because it was a stick shift. So I had to have someone pick me up and drop me off. So after school, I got dropped off in my apartment, and I'm there, and I don't live with anybody. I don't have any, and I'm in this apartment hours and hours and hours, and it's just silent. It's just me and my thoughts, and I did not like that amount of quiet all the time.
See, for
It
me,
was just so I'd be like calling people. I was calling
Yeah,
my friends
your
back
mom
in
did the
Florida.
same thing.
I know. I'd call my friends back in Florida, and they were all busy living their life, and I was like, I don't have anybody to talk to. I don't know anybody here.
yeah, if we were,
And,
you and your mom are so much alike. Like if it gets quiet, if it's quiet for 13 seconds, you guys are like,
My mom would start humming.
Yeah,
She'd start
it
reading
can't be-
street signs
yeah, it's insane. Like what?
aloud. She'd be like, oh, look, Rafi Law Firm. Oh, my.
Yeah, right. See, for me, when I think of something like that, first of all, let me just say, I think it sounds wonderful. Really, really wonderful. Because I think, what will I experience? What will happen if I go that long without talking, that long without engaging? What will I hear from the Holy Spirit? I see you're going to talk, and I'm.
I was gonna say, it sounds like nothing will happen if I.
Hold back your words and allow me to speak as well. So, if you would, so I just think like what would take place because you just don't know to have that amount of silence. I mean, think about Elijah in the cave. There was no one else there with him. He has no media or social media. He has no internet. He has no nothing. It is him in a cave, and there's the Lord. And maybe we don't see and we don't feel and we don't know what we want from the Lord because we don't have enough quiet.
I don't disagree with that.
And so for me, when I think about going someplace, like for 3 days, because I can't be away from family, like life still has to go on. And my mom used to go in Israel. There was some sort of monastery, and she would just get away for a while. And there have been times where I'm just like, oh, I wish there was a monastery nearby. Just because I think it sounds delightful to be alone. I mean, honestly, is that not the most introvert thing?
It is.
And you're the most extrovert thing?
I think I'm somewhere in between.
I
But
don't think so.
I lean
I
toward
think you've just
extrovert.
had to adjust because you're married to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. We used to be like, Cosme, we don't always have to, like, in the car, be quiet. And I'm like, we should be talking
Like,
or
no, we
listening
don't
to
always
something.
have to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought we had exhausted this topic, but we could probably...
Because there's just too many words. Like, we have too many words. You have too many words, Cosmo.
I don't have to.
You have too many words. Okay.
All right, I love you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, everybody. Enjoy the quiet. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.